It's finally here! Eichenfell, oh my god, it's been so long since I've checked in on this. Last time I heard about it was close to a couple years ago, and I remember it making a really strong impression on me. I can't remember how exactly, but it went something like this. Excuse me, pardon me. Yeah, McGreal's from New Fans Daily. When is the release date, please? My first impressions of Eichenfell were great, and checked off a lot of game tropes I enjoy. An emphasis on magic is number one. I love games that center around learning spells and growing as a witch or a wizard. Getting to travel to Eichenfeld and do just that? Count me in! I was sold immediately. Visually, I was reminded of Fire Emblem and Advance Wars, two games I adored when the only handheld I had was my Game Boy Advance SP. Both of these games introduced me to the concept of grid-based battle systems and had beautiful 2D pixel artwork and animations. To this day, I'm still the type of player who will watch each battle animation again and again and again because they're so well done. Finally, it seemed like Eichenfell only had a small grid that all battles took place on. Since different maps weren't a selling point, like in Fire Emblem or Advance Wars, variety would have to be introduced in other ways through the battles themselves, and that idea intrigued me. So, did it deliver? Oh yeah, it did. Big fan. Eichenfell hands down goes to one of my top memorable experiences with a video game. It was such a fun ride. The battle system never got old. It had its own unique flair to it, and I was consistently pleased with how different systems would affect one another to make a single cohesive experience. Now, before I really get into things, I encourage you to give Eichenfell a shot. I do my best to keep things spoiler-free since, you know, people who spoil things are the literal scum of the earth. But I do touch on some moments that are more effective going in blind. So give it a try, and come back here afterwards. I promise you, it's well worth a look. Well, are you ready? Then grab your cloaks, get your hats, and get ready to see this for a majority of the video. Because we're going to Eichenfell.
How we fought for Eichenfell.
Oh, sorry. We're going to Eichenfell.
To the fabled grounds of Eichenfell.
Things kick off with Merritt, our redhead protagonist, making her way towards the magical school of Eichenfell. Okay, we're just going to use the launch trailer pronunciation from here on out. As an ordinary, aka a non-magical person, you wouldn't think she has any business being on campus. Normally, you'd be right, but she's on the search for her sister Safina, who is an ambitious and popular student at Eichenfell. She's the one who's magically talented, doesn't always do things by the book, saves the school a few times, you know the drill. With a capable witch such as herself, it's odd that she never returned home for summer break. So Merritt has taken it upon herself to find her. But again, Merritt doesn't have an ounce of magic in her. This is quickly pointed out by the Ghost Guards tasked with keeping out any ordinaries from entering Eichenfell. Despite her best efforts and some impressively accurate rock throwing, she's quickly overwhelmed and about to be escorted out of the forest. But all of a sudden, a fantastic event occurs. Oh my god. To everyone's surprise, Merritt suddenly becomes a pyromancer. They have apparently never seen magic like this before, which threw me off a bit. I mean, Fireball is such a basic spell, typically speaking. But this change in the status quo shifts your expectations of the story immediately. It makes you wonder, what kind of magic is common in the world of Eichenfell? With Merritt's new magic, you're cleared to pass and eventually find a way into Eichenfell. More importantly, you wind up finding memory shards lying around campus. Through these shards, you learn the story actually takes place a few years into Safina's time at Eichenfell, starting from her freshman year to just before Merritt arrives on campus. These are what push the plot forward and give you insight on what caused Safina's disappearance. They also touch on her relationships with other characters, some of whom end up joining her party. Eichenfell's story is an exciting adventure and keeps you on your toes with each mystery to solve and magical being to fight. With the friends you make, spells you learn, and memory shards you find, it's eventually revealed why Safina went missing, and the finale pays off big time. Now, while I enjoyed a lot of aspects about the story, there were a few nagging thoughts that kept creeping in my mind. The first was caused by my original expectations of what the story would be versus the end result. The Kickstarter trailer gave me the impression that this would be a story where you go to magic school and slowly discover the mystery of Eichenfell. It actually turns out to be more of a where's my sister mystery that consistently ties into the actual plot being the weird magical occurrences happening around Eichenfell. I was so perplexed by this direction for the story that I reached out to Chevy Ray, the game's primary developer/designer. I basically asked what changes did the plot go through during development, convinced that there must have been some sort of shift in the story's focus. To my surprise, he revealed it actually stayed the same for the most part. It was a goal to start Eichenfell in the middle of an overarching plot, meaning how Merritt comes into the picture a few years into Safina's education. This is further enforced by some memory shards that reference previous adventures Safina had with her friends that would have been more akin to the episodic stories plot I expected. Sure, there are different areas you go through, each with their own goal to achieve, but they're all in support of the overall story of finding Safina. Now, this isn't a bad thing at all. Chevy intentionally chose to focus on finding your sister and figuring out the reason for her disappearance. He knew what story he wanted to tell, and it's an enjoyable mystery to see unfold. There's nothing wrong with maintaining focus on a polished element of your game, be it gameplay, story, or whatever. Before understanding the origin of the story, I kept feeling like the pacing seemed quick. For the most part, all cutscenes served a purpose of pushing the main story forward. There weren't any side adventures to go on, so it seemed very full throttle, go go go, on the main story. But after realizing Eichenfell is more about the mystery of where Safina is, and why weird stuff is going on, it makes sense to keep things focused on those plot lines. For mystery-based plots, you've already got the viewer's attention and engagement. What they want is more information to consider and create a hypothesis about what's really going on. You don't want to break up that rhythm and give them a reason to become bored and unengaged. While you want to stay focused, this created a feeling I couldn't shake, which was a desire for more character development. With the main plot being pushed forward almost explicitly, this left little to no time for building character relationships. I spent roughly 20 hours getting through the game, but a majority of that was from the battles, especially some of the later bosses. Hoi. By the time the end game hit, I only then felt like I was getting to know everyone on a more personal level. There are certain characters that wind up together that I didn't feel as invested about compared to other stories. It would have been nice to see more time given to fleshing out those relationships. Another way to explain this feeling is from storyboard animatics.
Oh, that's me they're talking about!
As a fan of animation, I love watching animatics, which by definition are supposed to hit the main shots of an animated sequence. When I see one I really enjoy, I always think, if only this were fully animated. And that's not to say the animatic was bad, far from it. It's just this nagging feeling of the potential that animatic could be if it were fully animated. Eichenfell emits similar feelings here and feels like a storyboard in how it hits the main points of the plot extremely well, but didn't quite deliver that full end product for me. But on the other hand, this can be attributed to how invested I became with each of the characters, which is a compliment to Chevy and the team. There wasn't a single person I disliked, and I wanted to see them all be successful by the end of things. Hence why I wanted to see more interactions between them. I'm not trying to be a typical consumer whining about the amount of content given to me. Otherwise, I'd be begging for DLC right now. This magic is the good stuff. But I genuinely think that more time with the characters could have added a stronger connection between the player and the relationships being established. Now, look, I wanted to be truthful to what I felt, and it makes me sound like I wasn't satisfied with the story. So I want to be clear that after working out most of my initial impressions, I think it's a great story. Eichenfell is a memorable experience with plenty of well-written dialogue, good pacing, and twists that keep you wondering what's going to happen next. Chevy and the team did a fantastic job subverting your expectations, which, for a mystery-driven kind of plot, is really all you can ask for. Speaking of subverting expectations, for a game reminiscent of a Super NES title, there are moments that are downright eerie. Seriously, I genuinely felt creeped out by some of the stuff that went down. How certain bosses built up tension through the music and quick blink and you miss it uncanny events happening, it was creepy. Okay, Ted Fish Eyes, tell me what I need to know, please. I was not expecting that out of Ikenfell, especially when most of the game looks like this. But the unsettling music and surprising visuals are an effective combo towards these eerie moments. Congrats, Chevy. You made blocks scary. But enough story talk. You're here for the magic. So let's make some magic. Magic. Let's make some magic. Oh. First try. Exploring the grounds of Ikenfell is one of the most visually appealing parts of the game. The main campus acts as your hub world that leads you to a variety of different sections of the school. There's your stereotypical areas like the student dorms, library, and multiple lecture halls. But then you have unique locations like the astronomy tower in the middle of the Twilight Courtyard, or the dueling hall, which is like the designated PE area. Each of these parts of campus has their own unique color palette and overall design that sets it apart. For such a seemingly small map, there are a surprising number of areas to discover, and it's always fun seeing what's coming up next. The secrets you find and more puzzle-heavy segments in the buildings are also great. I even feel some puzzles seen in other games are better integrated here. One I liked was the make this 3x3 be the same color puzzle, because it gives you a set number of tries to solve it before it gets reset with an audible. This is smart because it teaches you that there is a certain way to solve the puzzle, and you could try again and again until you figure out the right pattern. As opposed to going with the good old brute force method. Well, I've learned nothing. Now, it wouldn't be a proper adventure without some obstacles. This is where the battle system comes in, and it's one of the main highlights of Ikenfell's overall experience. It's pretty involved too. The player needs to consider things like positioning, tactics, and casting the right spells at the right time. All of these things blend together into a lovely combination of turn-based strategy that we all know and love. Battles take place in a 12x3 grid. See, you were warned. Your 3-person party starting on the right and enemies on the left. Player stats that affect each battle consist of attack, defense, speed, and movement. Attack and defense are self-explanatory, but speed affects turn order, while movement tracks how many grid spaces you can travel per turn. Now, what determines a spell's effectiveness? Ikenfell utilizes an action system similar to that of the Paper Mario series. When your attack is about to land, you hit the action button to either get a nice or a great, depending on how good your timing is. On the flip side, if you're defending against an attack, you can hit the action button to lessen the damage received. Now, this system is mandatory to learn. Your spells will poke the enemy, at best, if you don't get these timings down. And likewise, you'll take a ludicrous amount of damage from enemy attacks. Just take a look at this clip where I get distracted by a text message and get absolutely wrecked. Yeesh, don't text and cast. For a grid-based combat system, positioning is naturally another important thing to master. It can easily make or break how effective turn actions are. Each spell has an area of effect to it, and it's important to use the right spell to attack the most enemies or buff the most party members. Some spells have extra side effects that require you to get up close to an enemy, while others can be used to attack multiple targets at once. Depending on if you want to attack more enemies or focus on just one, it's important to maintain good positioning. If you're not careful, your own positioning can throw a wrench in your plans. It doesn't matter if it's friend or foe, everyone in the blast area of a spell will get hit, for better or for worse. Enemies can place spell traps, which you can forget about and trap yourself, or you can trap yourself. Huh. But for real, spell traps are fun to play around with and mesh well with positioning. To get them triggered, you have to learn how each enemy moves. There's some that make their way towards you in a beeline fashion, but others will teleport or fly or whatever to a seemingly random spot. If you predict what attacks they'll use and where they need to be, you can sometimes get lucky with placing a trap in the exact spot you need it to be in. So we've talked about strategy and spells, but we haven't covered who casts them. As you explore campus, you'll meet the main cast who helps you fight all of the nasties within Ikenfell's walls. There's Petronella, the timid alchemist, Rook, the bookworm, Pertitia, the talented with glass, the flashy and shocking Gilda, and Ima, the artsy and smart student teacher. Including Merit, each character has a library of 8 spells that mix between straight up attacks, party buffs, or status effects. This makes choosing your party composition less restrictive and allows you to find a strategy that you like the most. Do you guarantee you can heal by having Petronella or Ima available? Or do you charge in with Merit and Gilda's selection of attack spells while Portia buffs their defense? At the end of the day, you can make a successful team with just about every combination of these 7 characters you can think of. While this flexibility is nice, the number one piece of praise Eichenfeld deserves is how engaging the battles are. I'll say it again, engaging. There's some turn-based systems in games that, how do I put this? They put me to sleep faster than melatonin. But in Eichenfeld, it focuses on keeping you engaged and thinking. God, I love it. What I like most about this system is how one thing will build off another. It's no accident we talked about the action system, positioning, and the spells themselves. Positioning affects what spells you can cast. Spells determine what happens to the enemy. The action system introduces risks if your plan works or if you accidentally put yourself in a bad spot. You're constantly making decisions about each of these things every time you take a turn. When casting spells, the attack animations are used to engage the player further. Since every animation is unique, it takes a few tries to watch, get familiar with, and learn when to hit the action button to achieve a spell's maximum effect. It's almost like the game wants you to pay attention and learn all the spells properly. Kinda like a magic student would. How about them apples? No, not those. But Honeycrisp is the best apple, so big kudos for their inclusion. So let me ask you something. Have you ever gotten an item that would really help you out in the moment, but then held on to it thinking, better save this until I need it? Do these thoughts plague you even when you're knee-deep into your adventure? By the end of your game, do you find these helpful items only result in taking up inventory space? Hi guys, I'm McReels. We've heard all of your complaints and we're ready to solve all of your item-based needs. Introducing... Use your items. Just use them. Oh, so good. Eichenfeld isn't shy about giving you access to items. Instead of an over-reliance on spells, there's an emphasis on being properly stocked up with potions and support items. In the first area, you start off with mushrooms, acorns, and cherries, which heal, grant a defense buff, and an attack buff respectively. Since items are one of few ways to regain health, you feel they're necessary to consume as you explore the wooded area. And even if you miss that point from the gameplay, the story itself hints at it to drive the point home. Arguably, if you're low on health, you could always go back to one of the many cats sprawled around Eichenfeld. Not only do they save your progress and give you a cute aww, but they also restore all party members' HP. So technically you could battle a few times and then run back to a cat to save your items. But 1, running back to a checkpoint damages the pacing of each area, and 2, there are items meant to heal you explicitly outside of battle. You heard me right. Item usage is encouraged so much that there are only some meant to heal outside of battles. Not only does this help last through an area, it also doesn't waste any items that you'd otherwise use in a battle. Now you may ask yourself, but I will eventually run out of items, right? And I can't always rely on picking up more. That's why there's an overabundance of cash everywhere. After each battle, you usually collect a healthy amount of gold, which goes towards better equipment and more items. Shops and vendors are everywhere. Even if you use your last acorn from the wood area, you can soon find it being sold for a reasonable price. Going back to our theme of engagement, equipment is handled in an interesting way. Most weapons and armor aren't a straight upgrade from the previous ones you get. Yeah, there are certain tiers of equipment, and definitely late game items are better than early to mid game, no doubt about that. But with each piece of equipment, there's typically a pro and a con associated with it in terms of stat boosts. Due to these positives and negatives, it's never a clear-cut choice on what you should wear. Do you want Merit to have more attack since she's got more attack-based spells? Or do you want her to have more defense since she may be positioned close to the enemies? That's for the player to think about and decide on. Along with your standard equipment, you also gain access to special accessories that have unique effects. These add a whole other layer planning out your battle strategy. One popular combo is using Gilda's teleport ability with the Skull Charm, which damages adjacent enemies at the start of your turn. You can then follow up with either another spell for more damage and get better positioning. With all of these special items and 6 party members, combos like this are plentiful to experiment with and find out what best suits your playstyle. This approach to items shined throughout my playthrough, and it was a welcome change of pace when compared to how they're usually handled. Removing that dreaded in case I need it feeling was refreshing. It promoted another level of strategy that puts your items on the same level of importance as your spells or your tactics. And how equipment prompted actual decision making was a simple way to promote more engagement from the player. My only disclaimer here is that players run the risk of not taking the hint to use all of the items at their disposal. I've been conditioned to optimize my item usage, not to put them on equal terms with my battle strategy. So despite having the latest equipment and even casting spells properly, I found myself doing small amounts of damage on mid-game enemies and bosses. This resulted in some battles dragging on longer than intended and made me feel like I wasn't doing something right. Due to Eichenfeld's significant difference towards handling items, it might have been good to have more reminders that it's okay to use them. But do you want to shove that message in the player's face or let the experience teach you? It's a tricky thing to balance, and personally, I'm all for the latter. Good game design speaks for itself, and Eichenfeld did a good job for the most part emphasizing the importance of items. If you played Eichenfeld, what do you think about how items were handled? Be sure to comment below. If you're wanting more insight on this topic, Chevy Ray has a great Twitter thread discussing more, which is linked in the description. Check it out. Man, Eichenfeld was totally worth the wait. There's so many things to love about it, I don't know where to begin. One thing a lot of people have noticed was the addition of anti-frustration features. They're designed to eliminate any hindrances towards a player's experience that they would have otherwise had. Here's something that caught my eye. Automatically win battles and gain experience. This helps if a player wants to focus more on the story. Coins dropped after battles float towards you when they're in danger of disappearing. This supports the importance of currency to keep your items stocked. If a party member has low HP after a battle, a message will be displayed. Reminds you to heal before your next encounter. Everyone levels up whether or not they participated in a battle. No party member gets left in the dust level-wise. Can't get that attack timing down? Guarantee nice attacks at a minimum to help lessen the consequences from poor timing. The very existence of these features shows the care put into opening up the game to different types of players and account for their skill levels. Not to mention that all of these modifiers are implemented in such a way that it doesn't shame the player for using them. I'm looking at you, Super Mario 3D World. Oh, I'm well aware of the invincibility leaf power-up that you give to players who die numerous times. I don't need your charity. I know I keep messing up, but there's a lot going on and I'm trying my best, and can you just have faith in me for 1 second? Okay, that's it. Come here. Eichenfeld's biggest strength is what every game should strive towards. Do one thing extremely well and enhance the crap out of it. The battle system is clearly the main selling point of this game. It's polished, feels good, has lots of strategic elements to it, etc. At its core, you've got turn-based battles against interesting enemies with a total of 48 spells to play with. So, besides switching out characters to try out different spells, how do you enhance this experience? If we take everything we've talked about into account, you'll see how one decision early on can affect what strategy you ultimately come up with in your battles. Let's go back to the equipment that grants you effects. For this example, we'll be focusing on the Power Glove. The Power Glove buffs your attack whenever your health is at critical levels. Coincidentally, Merit learns a spell called Flare, which does big damage and can only be cast with the same health requirements. So now we've got a plan to use Merit as the primary damage dealer, but how do we keep her alive? We don't want to heal her too much or else she can't cast the spell. So let's toss Pertitia in there, because she knows spells that buff defense. Now if Pertitia's keeping Merit alive, who's looking out for Pertitia? Petronella is the obvious choice as a healer, but Ema knows a healing spell too and can provide nice support with her other attack and utility spells. Ema can also have Floral Scarf equipped, an item that extends the range of items to make Zir a more effective healer when needed. Planning out this particular strategy was a personal journey I undertook near the end of the game. It's only one example of the hundreds of paths players can take in coming up with their own playstyle. It's astounding how well each decision builds off one another to ultimately work towards the main focus of the game, the battle system. Your chosen party members affect the spells at your disposal. The spells affect what equipment you choose to best complement casting those spells. Your equipment makes you think about what other party members or consumables to use. Remember, they're important too. All these circular dependencies to decide on sounds intimidating, but in practice, you would not believe how natural these decisions come to you. As you sit on the victory screen, you can feel accomplished knowing your planning and your decision making earned you that win. Don't make me do that, Gibbs. So that's Ikenfell. If you're a fan of mysteries and magical turn-based battles, this game is definitely worth checking out. The dialogue was natural, witty, and even made fourth wall jokes at times that cracked me up. I loved exploring the campus, just admire all the colorful environments and beautiful pixel art. Battles were easily the highlight. Everything just came alive due to the quality of the animations. Just like Fire Emblem, I never got tired of seeing a spell's silky smooth execution. And the music, it was amazing. Gilda's theme is my favorite, hands down. I actually had a hard time defending during her battles, because I was too busy jamming.
What is it like to be loved and so adored? If I could be just as good as you, I'll never have to wonder. I can be better than I've ever been before. I'll do what it takes, I know I can be number one. No matter what they say, I'll never lose my way. I'm so much stronger.
No, not those. Oh no.